I always imagined losing my home would happen loudly, with sirens or a sheriff's notice. Instead, it arrived as a polite email congratulating me on paying off my mortgage 3 decades early. I stared at the screen, my stomach dropping. The balance was zero. The loan was satisfied. But as I stared at the timestamp, I realized this was not a gift. It was the first quiet shot in a war I did not know I was fighting. The notification arrived on a Tuesday morning, buried between a digital receipt for coffee and a promotional flyer for winter tires. I almost deleted it without opening it. The subject line read, "Congratulations on your loan payoff." It was the sort of generic, breathless enthusiasm that usually accompanied a phishing attempt or a credit card offer I did not need. I was a compliance analyst for a logistics firm in Belmere. I spent my days hunting for irregularities in shipping manifests and tariff codes. I knew what scams looked like. They looked exactly like a mortgage lender celebrating a debt I still had 25 years to pay. I archived the email and went back to my spreadsheet. I felt smug, the way you do when you successfully sidestep a trap. 3 days later, the physical letter arrived. It was heavy, printed on high bond paper with the official North Valley Home Lending letterhead. The logo was embossed, the texture rising under my thumb as I stood by my kitchen island. I held my breath. Scammers could fake logos, but they rarely bothered with expensive cardstock. I ripped the envelope open, jaggedly tearing the top edge. Inside was a statement of account. I scanned the page, looking for the error, the misprint, the joke. Account number, ending in 4922, correct. Property address, 14 Briarwood Lane, Belmere, correct. Principal balance, $0.00. My knees felt suddenly loose, like the ligaments had turned to water. I gripped the granite countertop. There was a section at the bottom, bolded and boxed. Loan status, satisfied, paid in full. I read the words out loud to the empty kitchen. Paid in full. It sounded like a prayer I hadn't authorized. I had $314,000 left on that loan. I had barely scratched the equity. I saved every receipt, tracked every penny, and managed my budget with a precision that bordered on obsessive. You do not just accidentally pay off a house. I ran to my laptop, my fingers fumbling as I typed in my password. I logged into the North Valley portal. The dashboard, which usually displayed a depressing blue bar graph of my remaining debt, was now a cheerful green circle. Congratulations, Anna, you are mortgage-free. I clicked on the transaction history. There it was, a single line item dated 2 days prior. Wire transfer received. External source, $314,280. The timestamp was 2:15 in the afternoon. I sat back in my chair, the silence of the house pressing in on me. At 2:15 on Tuesday, I had been in a budget meeting with the vice president of operations. I had been arguing about fuel surcharges. I had not been wiring the equivalent of a small fortune to pay off my house. The panic did not hit me as a scream. It hit me as a cold, paralyzing silence. If I did not owe the bank money anymore, that meant the bank no longer owned the title. And if the bank released the title, where did it go? I grabbed my purse. I needed to see a human being. The North Valley branch in Belmere was a sterile glass box near the highway, smelling faintly of carpet cleaner and stale coffee. I sat across from a loan officer named Greg, a man with an eager smile and a tie that was slightly too wide. He looked at the paper I had slammed onto his desk. "Well, Ms. Foster," he said, looking at his screen, "I am not sure what the problem is. Most people come in here popping champagne when this happens. You are free and clear." "I did not send that money," I said. My voice sounded thin, brittle. "I want to know where it came from." Greg clicked his mouse, his brow furrowing. "It looks like a standard wire payoff. Cleared and verified. Funds originated from Harbor State Bank." "I do not bank with Harbor State," I said. "I have never banked with Harbor State." "Maybe a relative?" Greg suggested, offering a helpful shrug. "An inheritance? Sometimes these things are surprises. Show me the authorization, I demanded. You cannot just accept a wire of that magnitude without a payoff request signed by the borrower. Show me the request. Greg sighed, clearly thinking I was the most ungrateful woman in the state, but he typed a few commands and turned his monitor toward me. Here is the scanned document, received via secure upload the day before the wire. I leaned in, squinting at the screen. It was a standard payoff request form. All my information was typed neatly, and at the bottom, there was a signature, Anna Marie Foster. I stared at it. It was my name. It was my loop on the capital A. It was my sharp, jagged cross on the T, to a stranger, to Greg, to a judge. It was my signature. But the tail of the Y in my middle name was too short. When I signed quickly, I dragged the tail out. This one curled in tight, restricted, cautious. It was a signature drawn by someone who was looking at a copy of my handwriting, not someone moving with the muscle memory of 32 years. That is a forgery, I whispered. Greg pulled the monitor back. It was notarized. Ms. Foster, we verified the notary seal. Everything is compliant. Who is the notary? I asked. Derek Voss, Greg read. Look, if you want to dispute this, you can file a claim. But honestly, the loan is paid. The bank has its money. We are releasing the lien. Technically, you are not our customer anymore. I walked out of the bank into the bright, blinding afternoon sun. The air was crisp, the leaves turning the burnt orange of late October. It was a perfect autumn day in the suburbs, the kind of day I had worked my whole life to afford. I stood by my car, my hands shaking so hard I could not get the key into the door. Someone had paid off my house. It was not a gift. I knew, with a sickening certainty, that it was a purchase. I needed to call my mother. It was an instinct I should have outgrown. Elaine Foster was not a source of comfort. She was a source of critique. But she was also the matriarch, the one who knew everything about everyone in our family. If there was a surprise inheritance, if some long-lost uncle had died and left me a fortune, she would know. She answered on the second ring. Anna, she said. Her voice was smooth, polished, lacking the jagged edges of my own anxiety. I was just thinking about you. Are you coming for Sunday dinner? Evan is bringing that new girlfriend. Mom, something weird is happening, I said, cutting straight through the pleasantries. I was sitting in the driver's seat of my sedan. Doors locked. My mortgage was paid off, all of it, over $300,000. There was a pause on the line. It was not the pause of shock. It was the pause of someone taking a sip of tea. Well, Elaine said, that is wonderful news, isn't it? No, Mom, it is not wonderful. I did not pay it. I do not know who did. Someone forged my signature on a payoff request. Forged is such a heavy word. Anna, she said. Her tone shifted, becoming lighter, dismissive. Maybe it is just a banking error, or maybe someone is looking out for you. Who has $300,000 to just look out for me? I snapped. I was at the bank. They have a document signed by me, but I did not sign it. I am going to the police. The police? Elaine's voice sharpened instantly. Anna, stop. Do not be dramatic. Why would you involve the police when someone gave you a gift? You are always so suspicious. You look for the cloud in every blue sky. This isn't a cloud. Mom, it's financial fraud. It is a blessing, she corrected me, her voice dropping to that low, authoritative register that used to make me freeze as a child. You were drowning in that mortgage. I could see the stress on your face every time I saw you. Maybe this is a way for you to start fresh. Just accept it. Stop fighting everything. My stomach turned over. I never said I was drowning. I have perfect credit. I have never missed a payment. You think you are hiding it, but a mother knows, she said. Just take a breath. We can talk about it on Sunday, but do not call the police. Anna, you will look hysterical. Imagine explaining to an officer that you are angry someone paid your debts. They will laugh at you. She hung up before I could respond. I stared at the phone. She had not asked the obvious questions. She had not asked. Who did it? She had not asked. Are you safe? She had told me to be quiet. She had told me I was drowning when I was swimming stronger than I ever had. I drove home on autopilot. When I pulled into my driveway, the house looked different. 14 Briarwood Lane was a modest craftsman bungalow with blue siding and a white porch. I had scraped the railings and painted them myself. I had planted the hydrangeas. Now, it looked like a stage set. It looked like something that could be struck and moved in the night. I went to the mailbox at the end of the driveway. It was a locking cluster box, the kind common in newer subdivisions. I slid my key in, but it caught. I jiggled it. Frowning, I leaned down to look at the lock mechanism. Around the keyhole, the black metal was scarred with bright silver scratches, fresh scratches. I ran my thumb over the gouges. Someone had been picking at this lock. I opened the box. It was empty. But I hadn't checked the mail in 2 days. There should have been flyers, bills, something. My mind raced back over the last few months. There had been times I thought I missed a bank statement. I had assumed it was the postal service, or that I had accidentally switched to paperless billing without noticing. I had blamed my own disorganization, the chaos of modern life. But what if I hadn't missed them? What if they were taken? I walked up the driveway. The silence of the neighborhood suddenly menacing. I felt watched. I went inside, locked the door, and engaged the deadbolt. Then I slid the chain lock into place. It felt flimsy. I needed Maya. Maya Henson had been my best friend since college. She was a project manager for a construction firm. A woman who lived her life in spreadsheets and risk assessments. She did not do hysteria. I called her on FaceTime. She answered while chopping vegetables. A glass of red wine on the counter. One look at my face, and she put the knife down. "What is it?" she asked. "You look like you saw a ghost." "Worse," I said. "I think my family is stealing my house." I told her everything. The email, the bank, the signature, the call with Elaine, the scratches on the mailbox. I laid it out like a compliance report. Fact after fact. Trying to keep my voice steady, Maya listened without blinking. When I finished, she took a sip of wine, her eyes dark and serious. "Anna," she said, "you need to listen to me very carefully. This isn't a prank. This is a setup." "Mom said I was being dramatic," I said, hating how small my voice sounded. "Your mother is gaslighting you," Maya said firmly. "Listen to the facts. The money came from somewhere specific. The signature was close enough to pass a casual glance. The mail is missing. This required planning. This required access. What do I do?" "Freeze everything," Maya commanded. "Right now. Go to the credit bureaus. Freeze your credit. Then change every password you have. Email, bank, retirement, everything. And you need to document this conversation with your mother. Write down exactly what she said while it is fresh. And then? And then you find out who filed the paperwork," Maya said. "If the mortgage is paid, the bank has to file a release of lien with the county, and usually, when a mortgage is satisfied, a deed transfer happens if the property is being sold or moved. You need to see who is on the title." "I am on the title," I said. "Are you?" Maya asked. "Are you sure?" I slept fitfully that night, waking up at every creak of the floorboards. I kept imagining someone with a key, sliding it into my lock, walking into the house I thought was mine. The next morning, I called out of work. I told my boss I had a family emergency. It was the truth. I dug the payoff paperwork out of my bag. Greg at the bank had given me the full packet. I scanned the pages until I found the section listing the title agency handling the transaction, Gray Pike Title Services. I called them at 9 o'clock sharp. "Gray and Pike, this is Sharon," a cheery voice answered. "Hi, this is Anna Foster," I said, trying to channel the authority of my professional life. "I am calling regarding a file for 14 Briarwood Lane, reference number 6772. "One moment, Ms. Foster," Sharon said. I heard the clicking of keys. "Ah, yes, the payoff and transfer. We are just waiting on the final recording confirmation from the county." My heart hammered against my ribs. Transfer? I asked. What transfer? I only received notice of a payoff. The corrective transfer packet, Sharon said, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. To the trust. We sent the courier over yesterday afternoon. I did not authorize a transfer to a trust, I said, my hand gripping the phone so hard my knuckles turned white. I am the sole owner. There is no trust. Oh, Sharon said. The cheeriness evaporated. Well, looking at the file here, I have a quitclaim deed signed by you, transferring the property to the Foster Family Trust. It was in the packet with the payoff authorization. I did not sign that, I said. Stop the recording. Do not file those papers. Ms. Foster, the courier dropped them at the county clerk's office this morning. Once they are submitted, it is out of our hands. You would have to take it up with the county. I hung up. I did not say goodbye. I grabbed my coat. The county records office was 20 minutes away in downtown Belmere, a brutalist concrete building that smelled of dust and bureaucracy. I drove like a maniac, weaving through traffic, my mind replaying the words Foster Family Trust. My parents had a trust. I knew that. Most people with assets did, but I was not a part of it. I had built my own life, separate from their tangled web of expectations and passive aggression. I ran up the steps of the records office. The clerk was a woman named Dolores, who moved with agonizing slowness. I need to see a deed filed today, I said, breathless. Property address, 14 Briarwood Lane. Dolores peered over her glasses. You the owner? Yes, I am Anna Foster. She typed a few keys. Just came in. Pending index. Here it is. She swiveled the screen. It was a digital scan of a document. Quitclaim deed. Grantor. Anna Marie Foster. Grantee. Foster Family Trust. Elaine Foster and Robert Foster. Trustees. Consideration. $10. I stared at the signature at the bottom. It was the same one from the bank. The tight loop, the hesitant tail, and below it, the notary stamp of Derek Voss. Can I get a copy of the preparation request? I asked. Dolores hit print. Here you go. I took the warm paper. It was a standard intake form for the deed preparation. It listed the requesting party. Requesting party, Elaine Foster. Relationship, mother/power of attorney. Power of attorney? I said aloud. I never gave her power of attorney. Dolores shrugged. If they have the document, they have the document. I walked out of the office, the papers clutched in my hand like a weapon. I sat on a bench outside the courthouse, the stone cold through my jeans. The pieces were falling into place, and the picture they formed was monstrous. The questions. God. The questions. I closed my eyes and the memories flooded back. Over the last year, Elaine had been so helpful, so interested. Flashback. 6 months ago, I was visiting my parents. Elaine was in her office, organizing files. Anna, darling, she had said, looking over her reading glasses. I am updating our estate planning. The lawyer says we need to list any potential heirs and their assets for tax liability purposes. Can you bring me a copy of your deed? And maybe your last few tax returns? Just so we get the numbers right. I had hesitated. Why do you need my deed? Oh, do not be difficult, she had sighed. It is just data entry. We want to leave you kids something, but the government takes half if we are not careful. Help me help you. I had brought her the copies. I had handed them to her. Flashback. 3 months ago. Anna, I cannot read this photocopy of your driver's license. The numbers are blurred. Can you text me a clear picture of the front and back? The insurance broker needs it for the umbrella policy. I had taken the picture. I had texted it. I had given her everything. I had handed her the blueprint to my own destruction. And I had done it because I wanted her to be proud of me. I wanted to be the good daughter who had her paperwork in order, who owned a home, who contributed to the family legacy. I looked down at the deed in my hand. Foster Family Trust. They had not just paid off my house, they were taking it. They were moving the asset into their control, under the guise of family protection, And they had forged my consent to do it. And the timestamp on the loan satisfied notification, 2 days ago, that was the day I had been at work. That was the day my house became their house. I drove home, but I did not go inside immediately. I sat in the driveway, looking at the windows. It was dark now. The sun had set while I was at the courthouse. The house looked hollow. I let myself in. The air inside was still and cold. I did not turn on the lights. I walked into the kitchen and sat on the floor. Leaning my back against the dishwasher, I pulled my knees to my chest. For years, whenever I questioned Elaine about a missing birthday check, about a comment she made that didn't sit right, about the way she treated Evan versus me, she had the same response. "You are too suspicious. Anna, you have such a dark imagination. Why can't you just trust people who love you?" She had weaponized my own sanity against me. She had trained me to doubt my gut until I was willing to hand over the keys to my life just to avoid being called difficult. I looked at the phone in my hand. I could call her, I could scream, I could drive over there and demand answers. But I knew what she would say. She would say I was ungrateful. She would say I was unstable. She would say she did it to save me. And if I yelled, if I cried, if I acted like the dramatic daughter she always painted me as, I would play right into her hands. I took a deep breath. The smell of the kitchen, lemon soap and old wood, grounded me. I would not call her. I would not scream. I stood up and placed the forged deed on the counter. I smoothed out the creases. "Okay," I said to the empty room. "You want to play legal games? Let's play." I was a compliance analyst. My entire career was built on finding the rot beneath the surface of clean paperwork. They thought they had buried me in paperwork. They didn't realize they had just given me the trail. I would not let them know I knew. Not yet. I would let them think I was confused, grateful, or just stupid. I would let them think the transfer had gone through unnoticed. And while they sat comfortable in their arrogance, I was going to take apart their fraud. Brick by brick, I opened my laptop. I created a new folder. I named it The House. Then I picked up my phone and texted Maya. "You were right. It is a takeover. I need a lawyer." I sat in the dark, the blue light of the screen illuminating my face, and for the first time in 3 days, I didn't feel like crying. I felt cold. I felt precise. I felt like the daughter my mother had never bothered to know. I did not choose Renee Calder because she was warm. I chose her because the reviews for the Levin Legal Group suggested she was a shark who smelled blood in the water before the first drop hit the ocean floor. My previous experiences with lawyers had been limited to the polite, dusty man who handled my closing 3 years ago, a man who spoke in soft murmurs and congratulated me on my starter home. I did not need congratulations now. I needed a weapon. The offices of Levin Legal were located in a glass spire in downtown Belmere, the kind of building that looked down on the rest of the city with cold indifference. I sat in the waiting room, clutching a manila folder so tight the edges were damp from my palms. When I was finally called back, Renee did not stand up to shake my hand. She was reviewing a document on a dual monitor setup, her glasses perched on the end of a nose that looked like it could cut glass. "Sit," she said, without looking up. "I have read your intake form. Mortgage paid off without authorization. Deed transfer pending. Mother involved. Is that the summary?" "Yes," I said, sinking into the leather chair. "I need to stop it." Renee finally looked at me. She was younger than I expected, perhaps 40, with hair cut in a severe bob that brooked no argument. "Stop it? Ms. Foster, if the wire cleared and the deed is at the county. The train has already left the station. We are not trying to stop it. We are trying to derail it before it reaches the depot." She spun her chair around and picked up a legal pad. "Real estate fraud cases do not hinge on outrage. Every client I have sits in that chair and tells me how unfair it is. The law does not care about unfair. It cares about timeline and intent. So, let us look at the mechanics." She began to draw a diagram on the pad. "This is a classic equity stripping scheme, but with a familial twist. Usually, we see this with strangers targeting the elderly. Here is how it likely worked. Step 1. The forged borrower authorization. They needed your signature to request the payoff quote. Banks are privacy paranoid, but if you send a fax with a signature that matches the one on file, they talk. I did not sign it, I said. I know you didn't, Renee said, her voice dry. But someone who had access to your historical signatures did. Step 2. The payoff. Third-party funds. This is the clever part. By paying off the loan, they remove the bank from the equation. The bank doesn't care about the title anymore because they got their money. They release the lien. Now the property is unencumbered. And then they transfer it, I whispered. Seeing the picture form. Correct. Step 3. The corrective transfer. They file a deed, likely a quitclaim, transferring the now debt-free asset to a trust or a holding company. They argue that the payoff was consideration for the transfer. It creates the illusion of a consensual deal. You get your debt wiped. They get the house. On paper, it looks like a fair trade. It isn't a trade, I said, my voice rising. I didn't ask for the debt to be wiped. I wanted my house. And that is what we have to prove, Renee said. We need to prove you were not in the room. Notarization is the weak link. A deed must be notarized to be recorded. If we break the notary, we break the chain of title. She handed me a list of tasks. I need alibis, hard ones, not memories, receipts, cameras, location data. I need to know exactly where you were the minute that pen supposedly hit the paper. I left her office feeling lighter, not because the problem was solved, but because it had a name. It was not just a family betrayal. It was a mechanism, and mechanisms could be dismantled. The next morning, I arrived at my office building at 6 o'clock, 2 hours before my shift began. I worked in a massive logistics park on the south side of Belmere, a place of concrete and razor wire. I went straight to the security office. The head of security, a man named Miller who usually only saw me when I lost my badge, looked up from his coffee. "Everything okay, Anna?" he asked. "I need footage. Miller," I said. "From last Tuesday. Specifically, the pedestrian exit of the parking garage and the lobby turnstiles. Between 1 o'clock and 3 o'clock in the afternoon." Miller frowned. "HR issue?" "Legal issue," I said. "Personal. I need to prove I was here." He typed in the date. The monitors flickered. "Tuesday. Here we go." I watched the screen. At 2:15 in the afternoon, the exact timestamp on the notarized deed I had seen at the county office, the screen showed me sitting in the break room. I was eating a yogurt and reading a book on my Kindle. I looked bored. I looked tired. But most importantly, I looked undeniably present. "Can you export that?" I asked, pointing at the screen. "And certify the timestamp?" "Sure," Miller said. "But Anna, you know this shows you doing nothing, right?" "It shows me not signing a deed across town," I said. "That is everything." I took the thumb drive and sat in my car. I pulled up the photo I had taken of the documents at the county office. The notary's stamp was clear. Derek Voss, commission number 88921. I searched his name on the State Licensing Board website. Derek Voss, active commission. Address listed as a pack and ship store in a strip mall on the east side of Belmere. I called the store. "Pack it all. This is Derek," a voice answered. Young, bored. "Hi, Derek," I said, keeping my voice bright. "I am looking for a notary. Are you available today?" "Yeah, I am here until 6, he said. "Were you working last Tuesday?" I asked casually. "I stopped by around 2, but the shop was closed." "Last Tuesday?" He paused. "Nah, I was here. I did a mobile signing in the morning, but I was back at the counter by 1. "Why?" "Just checking my memory," I said. I must have gone to the wrong place. I hung up. If he was at his counter at 1 o'clock. He could not have been at the law office listed on the deed's location of signing, and if he was at his counter, and I was at my office, then the personal appearance required by law never happened. He was lying, or he had been tricked, or he had been paid. My phone buzzed on the passenger seat. The screen flashed. Evan, my younger brother, the golden boy, the one who had never balanced a checkbook in his life because Elaine always ensured there was money in the account before the math became necessary. I stared at the phone. I hadn't spoken to him since the payoff. Did he know? I answered. Hey, sis, Evan said. He sounded breathless, like he was walking fast. Just checking in. Mom said you were acting a little weird the other day. Weird? I repeated. She paid off my house without asking me. Evan, I think weird is an understatement. Yeah, about that, Evan said. Look, it is a good thing, right? No mortgage payments. That frees up cash flow. I was actually wondering, are you thinking of listing it? The question hung in the air, heavy and sharp. Listing it? I asked carefully. Why would I list it? I mean, the market is hot, Evan said, his voice rushing now. And without the loan, you get the full equity. Mom mentioned you might be looking to downsize, or maybe move closer to the city? You always hated the yard work. I gripped the steering wheel. I loved my yard work. I spent my weekends pruning roses. I had never, not once, told anyone I wanted to move closer to the city. Evan, I said, did Mom tell you I wanted to sell? She mentioned you seemed overwhelmed, he said, backpedaling. She said you guys talked about it, that you wanted out of the responsibility. We never talked about it, I said. Evan, look at me, or listen to me. I never said that. Why is everyone acting like I agreed to this? Whoa, calm down, Evan said. I am just asking. God, you are so intense lately. Just come to dinner on Sunday, okay? We can talk about it when everyone is calm. He hung up. I sat there, the silence of the car ringing in my ears. You wanted out of the responsibility. That was the narrative. They were building a story where I was the fragile, overwhelmed spinster who couldn't handle the burden of homeownership, and they were the benevolent saviors stepping in to relieve me of my troubles. Sunday dinner was a tradition I usually endured with a glass of wine and a dissociation technique I had perfected in my 20s. But this Sunday, I walked into my parents' house with a recorder running in my purse. The house smelled of roast beef and rosemary. It was a smell that used to mean safety, but now it smelled like a trap. Elaine was in the kitchen, wearing a cashmere sweater that probably cost more than my monthly grocery budget. My father, Robert, was in the den watching golf. As detached as ever, he was a man who let Elaine steer the ship, even if she steered it into an iceberg. Anna, Elaine cried, coming forward to kiss my cheek. She smelled of expensive perfume and hairspray. I am so glad you came. I was worried you were still sulking. I am not sulking, Mom, I said. Stepping back, I am investigating. Oh, stop it, she said, waving a hand. Come have a drink. Evan is already on the patio. We sat around the mahogany dining table. The china was the good set, the one with the gold rim. The wine was a heavy Cabernet. So, Elaine said, after the salad was served, have you had a chance to breathe? To realize how lucky you are? I went to the bank, I said, cutting a piece of beef. They showed me the payoff authorization. The signature wasn't mine. Elaine sighed, placing her fork down with a sharp clink. Anna, we helped you. Why are you so obsessed with the paperwork? You were drowning. I saw your face at Christmas. You looked exhausted. I told your father. She is working herself to death for that house. We just wanted to save your credit before you crashed. My credit score is 810, I said. I have 6 months of savings in the bank. I was not drowning. You think you are fine, Elaine said, her voice dropping to that reasonable, pitying tone. But you hide things. You always have. You take on too much and then you crack. Remember college? Remember sophomore year? My face flushed hot. Sophomore year, I had a panic attack during finals week. One panic attack, 10 years ago. That was a decade ago, I said. I am a compliance analyst. I manage millions of dollars in risk assessments. I am not a child. You are my child, Elaine said. And I know when you are overwhelmed. We paid the debt. The house is safe now. It is in the trust. It stays in the family. You can live there as long as you need to. As long as I need to? I repeated. It is my house. I own it. Technically, Evan piped up, his mouth full of potatoes. If it is in the trust owns it, but you are a beneficiary, so it is like shared. I looked at my brother. He wouldn't meet my eyes. He knew. He absolutely knew. Where did the money come from? I asked. $300,000 doesn't just appear. Elaine took a sip of wine. We have investments. Anna, you know that. I traced the wire. I lied. I hadn't traced it yet, but I wanted to see her flinch. It came from an account managed by Meridian Advisory Collective. Elaine didn't flinch. She smiled. A tight, predatory smile. Well, yes, Lydia handles our portfolio. She is a miracle worker, Lydia Crow. I knew the name. She was Elaine's tennis partner. A woman with a smile like a shark and a reputation for aggressive wealth management. So Lydia wired the money? I asked. She facilitated the restructuring, Elaine said. It is complicated. Anna, high-level finance, you do not need to worry about the details. The point is, you are debt-free. You should be thanking us. I didn't ask for this, I said, my voice shaking despite my best efforts. You did, Elaine said softly. You told me last month. You said, Mom, I am so tired of the bills. I just want it to stop. Do you not remember? I froze. I remembered saying I was tired. I remembered complaining about a high electric bill during the heat wave, but I never said I wanted out. I didn't mean sell the house, I said. See? Elaine gestured to Evan. She doesn't remember what she says. This is exactly why we needed to step in. You are unstable. Anna, you say one thing and mean another. We are just protecting you from yourself. The table went silent. The gaslighting was so thick I could taste it. It wasn't just a lie. It was a rewriting of my reality. They were using my own vent sessions, my own moments of normal human fatigue, as evidence of incompetence. I stood up. I am leaving. Sit down, my father grumbled. It was the first thing he had said all night. No, I said. I am going home to the house that I bought, and on Monday, my lawyer is going to subpoena the records from Meridian Advisory. Elaine laughed. It was a cold, short sound. Go ahead. Waste your money on lawyers. You will just prove us right. You cannot handle your own affairs. I walked out. I didn't slam the door. I closed it very gently, severing the connection. Monday morning, I was back in Renee's office. I played her the recording of the dinner. When Elaine said, "You are unstable," Anna, Renee's eyes narrowed. She is building a case for capacity, Renee said. She isn't just taking the house. She is laying the groundwork to argue that you lacked the mental capacity to manage your finances, hence the need for the trust's intervention. She mentioned Lydia Crow, I said. Meridian Advisory. Renee typed the name into her system. Okay, we will add them to the discovery list, but I found something else. I pulled the filing history for the deed preparation. The county records show the document was drafted by a firm called Keller, Roan, and Bell. I felt a cold shiver go down my spine. Keller? That is the firm I used when I bought the house. They did my closing. Exactly, Renee said, which means they have your file. They have your original signature exemplars. They have your social security number, your driver's license scan, everything. Can they represent my mother against me? I asked. No, Renee said. That is a massive conflict of interest. If they used your confidential client information to facilitate a transaction that harmed you, they are in deep trouble. But it explains how the forgery was so good. They didn't trace it from a birthday card. They traced it from your original closing documents. Renee leaned forward, her face grim. But that is not the worst part. I have a contact at the clerk's office. I asked him to check if there were any other pending filings under your name or the trust's name that haven't been recorded yet. She slid a piece of paper across the desk. It was a photocopy of a document titled Affidavit of Voluntary Relinquishment. I read the first paragraph. I, Anna Marie Foster, being of sound mind but acknowledging significant mental exhaustion and financial hardship, hereby voluntarily relinquish all rights of occupancy to the property at 14 Briarwood Lane. They haven't filed it yet, Renee said. But look at the date. I looked at the signature line. It was signed by me. Another forgery. But the date next to it was not last week. It was dated 3 weeks from now. Why? I asked, looking up at Renee. Why future date it? Because they are waiting for you to break, Renee said. They are pushing you, the gaslighting, the missing mail, the comments about you being unstable. They are waiting for a public incident, a panic attack at work, a screaming match on the front lawn. Once you crack, they file this. It validates the timeline. It proves that you admitted you couldn't handle it. I stared at the document. It was a script. They had written the end of the movie, and now they were just trying to direct me into the final scene. They want me to leave, I said. They want you to surrender, Renee corrected. They want you to believe that you are actually crazy, that you actually agreed to this. If they can make you doubt your own memory enough, you might just sign the real thing to make the confusion stop. I thought about the relatives calling me, asking if I was okay, repeating the line. You said you wanted out. It was a chorus. A coordinated assault on my reality. I am not crazy, I said. It was a statement of fact, but it felt like a lifeline I was throwing to myself. No, Renee said. You are the victim of a very sophisticated, very expensive fraud ring, and your mother is the CEO. Renee took the paper back. We need to move fast. If they file this, they can evict you. We need an injunction. We need to freeze the title and block any further filings. I am going to draft the complaint tonight. Can you handle going back to that house knowing what they are planning? It is my house, I said. I am not going anywhere. I drove home in a daze. The sun was setting, casting long, bruised shadows across the lawns of Belmere. I pulled into my driveway and looked at the mailbox. I had replaced the lock, but I still checked it nervously. Empty. I walked to the front door. I unlocked it. I stepped inside. The house was quiet, but as I stood in the foyer, I heard a sound, a low, rhythmic beeping. It was coming from the kitchen. I walked down the hall, my heart hammering. The beeping was coming from the security panel near the back door. The green light was flashing red. System disarmed. I lived alone. I had armed the system when I left. Hello? I called out. Silence. I checked the back door. It was unlocked. I didn't own a gun. I owned a heavy cast-iron skillet. I grabbed it from the drying rack. I checked the rooms, one by one. The living room, the guest room, the bathroom. Empty. But in my bedroom, something was wrong. My nightstand drawer was slightly open. I walked over and pulled it out. It was where I kept my journals, my private thoughts, my fears. The top journal, the one I had been writing in for the last 6 months, was moved. I always placed it spine out. It was spine in. Someone had been here. Someone had been reading. I opened the journal. On the last page, where I had written about my anxiety over a project at work, there was a sticky note attached. It was my mother's handwriting. Elegant, looped, we just want you to be happy. Anna, stop fighting. I stared at the note. She had a key. Of course she had a key. I had given her a spare 3 years ago, for emergencies. She hadn't taken anything. She hadn't trashed the place. She had just left a note, a reminder. I can get to you anywhere. I peeled the sticky note off the page. I didn't crumble it. I placed it in a plastic sandwich bag. Evidence. I sat on the edge of my bed. My hands were trembling, but my mind was cold. They had a draft affidavit dated 3 weeks from now saying I was leaving due to mental exhaustion. They were trying to manufacture the exhaustion. They were gaslighting me, invading my space, rewriting my history. I looked at the date on the calendar on my wall. 3 weeks. That was the deadline. I picked up my phone and called Renee. File the injunction, I said, and add a request for a restraining order. She was in my house. Did she hurt you? Renee asked. No, I said, looking at the plastic bag with the yellow note. She left a love note. I locked the bedroom door. I wedged a chair under the handle. I didn't sleep. I sat in the dark, watching the streetlights cast shadows on the ceiling, waiting for the sun to rise so I could go to war. They wanted me to be unstable? Fine, I would be unstable. I would be a hurricane, but I would be a hurricane that aimed straight for their foundation. The silence of the house was no longer empty. It was heavy with the presence of the people who wanted to steal it. But as I sat there, clutching the evidence of their betrayal, I realized something. They were trying to make me doubt myself because they were afraid of me. They needed me to agree because without my agreement, their whole house of cards, the trust, the payoff, the social standing, would collapse. I wasn't the victim, I was the witness, and witnesses were dangerous. I closed my eyes and waited for the morning. The countdown had started. 14 days until the affidavit said I would break. I had 14 days to prove them wrong. The fluorescent lights of the Belmere Civil Court hummed with a low, headache-inducing frequency that seemed to vibrate directly against my skull. I sat at the plaintiff's table, my hands clasped so tightly that my fingernails left crescent moon indentations in my skin. Beside me, Renee Calder was the picture of predatory stillness. She did not fidget. She did not check her watch. She stared at the judge with a focus that suggested she was memorizing the atomic structure of his face. Judge Vance was a man who looked like he had seen every possible variation of human greed and was unimpressed by all of them. He shuffled the papers of our emergency filing, the sound echoing in the nearly empty courtroom. "Ms. Calder," Judge Vance said, his voice gravelly, "you are asking for an injunctive relief to freeze a property transfer based on a claim of familial fraud. This is a heavy accusation. Usually, these disputes belong in probate or family mediation, not my civil docket." "Your Honor," Renee said. Standing up, her voice was not loud, but it carried to the back of the room. "This is not a dispute over a will. This is an active, ongoing theft. My client, Ms. Foster, is the sole title holder of the property at 14 Briarwood Lane. A payoff was made without her consent, and a deed transfer was initiated with a forged signature. If this court does not intervene, the title will legally pass to a trust controlled by the defendants within 48 hours. Once that title moves, reclaiming it becomes a matter of years, not days." The opposing counsel, a slick man named Mr. Aris, who represented the Foster Family Trust, stood up. He smiled a smile that did not reach his eyes. "Your Honor, this is simply a daughter having cold feet about a financial restructuring she requested. The payoff was a gift. The transfer was the agreed-upon condition. To freeze this now would cause significant tax liabilities for the trust." "Tax liabilities," I whispered, the absurdity of it choking me. "They stole my house." Renee placed a hand on my forearm, silencing me. Judge Vance looked over his reading glasses at me. "Ms. Foster, you are alleging you did not sign these documents?" "I did not, Your Honor," I said. My voice shook, but I forced it to be clear. "I was at work. I have never agreed to transfer my home to my mother." The judge sighed. He picked up his gavel, turning it over in his hand. "I am going to grant a temporary restraining order on the recording of the deed. The county clerk is instructed to hold the transfer." I let out a breath I felt like I had been holding for a week. "However," Judge Vance continued, pointing the gavel at me, "I am not in the habit of interfering with family estate planning based on he said, she said. This order expires in 14 days, 2 weeks. You come back here on the 19th with something more substantial than a discrepancy in handwriting, or I dissolve the order and let the chips fall where they may. Do you understand?" "We understand, Your Honor," Renee said. 14 days, the judge repeated. He banged the gavel. It sounded like a gunshot. As we walked out of the courtroom, the adrenaline that had sustained me crashed. I leaned against the marble wall of the corridor, feeling the cold seep into my blazer. 14 days is nothing, I said. Renee, how are we going to prove a negative in 2 weeks? Renee was already typing on her phone. We don't prove a negative. We prove the fraud. We have the pause button. Now we need the microscope. I have already booked you an appointment with Sterling Handwriting Lab for tomorrow morning. And I want you to dig into the communication channels. If they authorized a payoff, the bank had to verify it. Find out how. The Sterling Handwriting Lab was located in a converted medical office park, which was fitting, because the man who ran it, Mr. Sterling, treated documents like terminal patients. He was a small, bird-like man who wore white cotton gloves and spoke in a whisper. He placed the original payoff authorization, which Renee had subpoenaed from the bank immediately after the hearing, under a massive microscope connected to a high-resolution monitor. Look here, Mr. Sterling said, pointing a laser at the screen. See the letter A? I looked. On the screen, the ink of my signature looked like a river. Yes, a natural signature is a ballistic movement, he explained. Your muscles memorize the shape. You sign quickly. The ink flows smoothly, tapering at the ends of the strokes where the pen lifts. Now, look at this curve. He zoomed in. The line of the A was jagged, tiny, microscopic tremors were visible along the edge of the ink. This is called hesitation. Mr. Sterling said. The person writing this was not relying on muscle memory. They were drawing. They were looking at an image of your signature and tracing it, likely over a light box or using a carbon transfer method. Their hand was moving slowly, correcting as it went. That is why the ink pools in these little dots. That is the hesitation of a forger. Can you testify to that? I asked. I can write a report that says it is highly probable this is a simulation, he said. But to be certain, I found something else. Look at the loop of the letter Y. He brought up a second image. It was the quitclaim deed. I overlaid the signature from the payoff request onto the signature from the deed, he said. He clicked a button, and the two images superimposed perfectly. They are identical, mathematically identical. No human signs their name exactly the same way twice. There is always variance in size, slant, spacing. These two signatures match down to the pixel. Meaning? Meaning they are not two signatures. Mr. Sterling said, they are the same digital image, or the same tracing template used twice. It is a mechanical reproduction. You did not sign either of these documents. Ms. Foster. I stared at the screen. It was science. It was math. It was proof that my mother hadn't just misunderstood me. She had photocopied my identity. I need that report, I said. I need it today. Armed with the knowledge that the documents were physically forged, I turned my attention to the digital trail. Renee had asked a crucial question. How did they verify the transaction? North Valley Home Lending required two-factor authentication for any wire transfer over $10,000. They would have sent a code. I sat at my kitchen table, my laptop open, surrounded by a fortress of old billing statements. My cell phone number had been my primary contact for a decade. I checked my text history for the day of the transfer. Nothing. No codes from the bank. I logged into the bank's profile settings. I hadn't looked at the Contact Information tab in years. I clicked it. Primary phone, 555-0199. I froze. That was my parents' landline number. The number I had grown up with. I had listed it as a backup number when I first opened the account 10 years ago, back when I was 22 and still relied on them for emergencies, but it was listed as primary. I called the phone company. I needed to know if that landline was still active. Yes, ma'am, the operator said. That line is part of the Foster family bundle. It has call forwarding and voicemail features enabled. Is there a log of incoming calls? I asked. I am an authorized user on the family account. I gave her the PIN my mother used for everything, my birthday. It worked. Let me send you the call log for the last billing cycle, the operator said. The email arrived 3 minutes later. I scanned the list for last Tuesday. There it was. 2:14 in the afternoon. Incoming call from North Valley Home Lending. Duration, 3 minutes, followed immediately by an outgoing call to voicemail retrieval. My mother had rerouted the bank's verification call to the landline she controlled. She had waited by the phone, she had taken the call, or retrieved the code from the voicemail, and authorized the theft of my home. I felt a wave of nausea. This wasn't just opportunism, this was a siege. She had kept that number on my account, or perhaps switched it recently, specifically to bypass me. I needed to put it all together. I needed a timeline that was so tight, not even Elaine's gaslighting could slip through the cracks. I called Maya. "Come over. Bring your laptop. We are building a war room." Maya arrived with a box of pizza and a grim determination. We cleared the living room floor and started taping index cards to the hardwood. "Okay," Maya said, sitting cross-legged with her laptop. "Tuesday, the day of the wire. Where were you?" "Work," I said. "I have the security footage." "Good. But we need more. We need to account for every minute." She opened my rideshare app history. "Here, you took a Lyft from the office to the dentist at 4 o'clock. We have the receipt. We have the GPS map." She pulled up my smartwatch data. "Your heart rate monitor shows you were on the treadmill at the gym at 6 o'clock. Unless you were signing deeds while sprinting at 7 miles per hour. You have an alibi." We built the timeline hour by hour. 1 o'clock. Anna at desk. Witness manager. 2:15. Wire authorized. Anna in meeting. 2:30. Notary claims. Anna appeared. Anna in meeting. 6 o'clock. Jim. Smartwatch data. Then we overlaid the fraud. 2:14. Call to Foster landline from bank. 2:30. Notary. Derek Voss log signature. "It is impossible," Maya said, sitting back and looking at the timeline taped to the floor. "Physically, spatially, temporally impossible. You would have needed a teleportation device. And a willingness to destroy my own life," I added. My phone buzzed. It was Evan. "Can we talk?" "Not at the house. Meet me at the park by the river. Please." I looked at Maya. "Evan wants to meet." "Be careful," Maya warned. "He is one of them." "He is the weak link," I said. I met Evan at a park bench overlooking the muddy water of the Belmere River. He was wearing a hoodie, his hands shoved deep into the pockets. He looked terrible. Dark circles rimmed his eyes. "You look tired," I said, sitting on the opposite end of the bench. "I haven't slept," he muttered. "Mom is on a warpath. She says you're having a breakdown. She is telling everyone, Aunt Carol, the cousins, that you are off your meds. I didn't even know you were on meds. I am not on meds. Evan, that is the point." He looked at the water. "I didn't know it was the house. Anna, I swear." "What did you know?" I asked softly. "She called me into the office a few weeks ago," Evan said, his voice cracking. "She had a stack of envelopes. She said it was tax planning, asset protection. She said, 'Evan, I need you to witness these signatures so we can secure the trust.' She said it was for my benefit too, to make sure the creditors didn't come after the family money. And you signed them?" "I signed as a witness," he whispered. "I didn't read them. They were in those blue legal folders. I just signed where the sticky flags were. I thought I was helping." "You witnessed a deed transfer. Evan, you witnessed her stealing my equity to cover your debts." He flinched. "My debts?" "The startup," I said. "I know she guaranteed your loans. I know the business failed. Did she tell you that my house is the collateral she's using to plug the hole you dug?" Evan turned to me, his face pale. "No," she said. "She said she handled the loans. She said she had a private investor." "I am the private investor," I said coldly. "Me, my home, my 30 years of payments." Evan put his head in his hands. "Oh my God. Anna, I am so sorry." "Sorry doesn't fix the title," I said. "I need you to testify. I need you to tell the judge you didn't see me sign those papers." "I can't," he pleaded. "She will cut me off. She pays my rent." "Anna, she pays for the car. If I go against her, I lose everything. You are losing your sister, I said, standing up. You have to choose, Evan, the money or the truth, but you better choose fast, because in 13 days, I am burning the whole thing down. I left him crying on the bench. I felt a pang of pity, but it was distant. He was 30 years old. His cowardice had a price tag, and I was done paying it. 3 days later, Renee deposed Derek Voss. We met in the conference room at Levin Legal. Derek Voss looked even younger in person than he sounded on the phone. He was wearing a cheap suit that didn't fit, and he was sweating before the videographer even turned on the camera. Renee sat across from him, her posture perfect, her voice razor-sharp. "Mr. Voss," she began, "you notarized a quitclaim deed dated October 24th, purporting to transfer ownership of 14 Briarwood Lane from Anna Foster to the Foster Family Trust. Is that correct?" "Yes," Derek said, shifting in his seat. "And you understand that a notary public is required by state law to witness the signing in the physical presence of the signer?" "Yes." "Did Anna Foster appear before you on that day?" Renee asked. Derek looked at me. I stared back, my face a mask of stone. She came in," Derek said. "A woman came in." "Describe her," Renee commanded. "She was average height, brown hair. She had ID." "What kind of ID?" "A driver's license." Renee slid a photo across the table. It was the security footage from my office building, stamped with the time. "This is Anna Foster at the exact time you claim she was in your shop. As you can see, she is 5 miles away. So, Mr. Voss, I am going to ask you again. Who brought you that document?" Derek looked at his lawyer, a court-appointed public defender who shrugged. "It is perjury if you lie now." "Derek," Renee said softly, "it is fraud. It is jail time. But if you tell us who actually brought the papers, maybe we can talk about cooperation." Derek crumbled. It was instantaneous. His shoulders slumped, and he exhaled a long, shaky breath. "It wasn't her," he whispered. "Who was it?" "A woman, older, very well dressed. She said she was the mother. She said the daughter had already signed them at home because she was sick. She said it was urgent. She offered me $500 to stamp them." "Did she give you a name?" "She didn't have to," Derek said. "She came in with another woman, younger, sharp features. The older woman called her Lydia. Lydia Crow, my mother's broker, the intermediary. And she told you Anna had already appeared?" "She said, 'My daughter is having a hard time. She can't leave the house. But we need to get this done for her own good.' She made it sound like charity." I closed my eyes. Charity. They had framed the theft of my life as a mercy killing. The deposition ended. We had the notary. We had the forgery. We had the timeline. But the stress was eating me alive. The next day at work, I was in the middle of a compliance review meeting. My boss, Sarah, was talking about tariff codes for a new shipment of electronics. "And we need to ensure the documentation is consistent with the manifests." Her voice started to sound like it was coming from underwater. The room tilted. My heart began to race, a chaotic, thumping rhythm that made my vision blur. I couldn't breathe. The walls of the conference room felt like they were closing in. "You are unstable," my mother's voice whispered in my head. "You are drowning." I stood up, my chair scraping loudly against the floor. "Anna?" Sarah asked, concern knitting her brow. I need a moment," I gasped. I ran to the bathroom. I locked myself in a stall and sat on the floor, pressing my forehead against the cold tile. I hyperventilated, my chest heaving. This was it. This was what they wanted. If I went back out there and fell apart, if I missed deadlines, if I acted erratic, I was proving their affidavit right. Mental exhaustion, voluntary relinquishment. I couldn't let them win. But I couldn't go back into that meeting and pretend I was okay. I washed my face with cold water. I stared at myself in the mirror. I looked pale, haunted. I walked to Sarah's office. She was sitting at her desk, reviewing the meeting notes. "Anna," she said, "are you all right?" I closed the door. I took a deep breath. "No," I said. "I am not all right. I am currently in the middle of a legal battle involving significant financial fraud committed against me by my family." I saw Sarah's eyes widen. I didn't stop. "I am under an immense amount of stress. I am fighting to keep my home. I am terrified that my performance is slipping. And I know that if I fall apart, it will be used against me in court. I need help. Sarah, I need you to know the truth so I don't look like I'm just losing my mind." It was the most vulnerable thing I had ever said to an employer. In the corporate world, you are supposed to be a machine. Emotions are liabilities. Sarah looked at me for a long moment. Then she stood up and walked around her desk. "Sit down, Anna," she said gently. I sat. "I am so sorry," she said. "I had no idea." "I tried to keep it separate," I said. "You don't have to," Sarah said. She reached for a binder on her shelf. "HR just updated our benefits package. We have a legal assistance program, referrals, consultations, but more importantly, we have a mental health leave policy. It is paid. You can take up to 3 weeks for acute personal crisis. No questions asked. Your job is protected." I stared at her. "Paid leave?" "Take the time," Sarah said. "Fight your war. We will cover your manifests. You are one of my best analysts. Anna, we want you back when you are whole. Don't let them break you." I walked out of her office feeling a strange sensation. It was gratitude. My mother, the person who was supposed to protect me, was trying to destroy me. My boss, a woman I only knew through spreadsheets, was offering me a shield. I took the leave. I went home. I dedicated every waking hour to the case. And then, the final piece fell into place. Renee called me on the 12th day of the injunction. Her voice was buzzing with energy. "You need to come in," she said. "We got the production from Meridian Advisory. Lydia Crow's emails and call logs. Did you find the wire transfer?" "Better," Renee said. "We found a voicemail." I sat in her office as she clicked a file on her computer. "This was recovered from Lydia Crow's office line," Renee explained. "It is a voicemail left by your mother 2 days before the payoff." The room went silent. Then, Elaine's voice filled the air. It was calm, conversational, chillingly pragmatic. "Lydia, it is Elaine. I have the notary lined up for Tuesday. Evan is handling the witness signatures. Don't worry, he won't ask questions. He's too scared of the debt. I need you to prep the wire. Make sure it looks like a standard payoff. Once the house is in the trust, she will come around. She always does. We just have to force her hand. It is the only way to keep the equity in the family. Call me back." I listened to it twice. "Once the house is in the trust, she will come around." It wasn't a crime of passion. It wasn't a desperate act by a mother trying to save a drowning child. It was a strategic acquisition. She viewed me not as a person, but as an obstacle to be managed, an asset to be seized. She knew I would be angry. She just didn't care, because she was convinced she could bully me into submission like she always had. Renee looked at me. "This proves intent. This proves conspiracy, and it proves malice." "She thinks I will come around," I said, my voice quiet. "She is wrong," Renee said. "She is about to find out exactly how wrong," I said. I stood up. The panic from the office was gone. The fear was gone. All that was left was a cold, hard clarity. I had the forgery. I had the notary. I had the timeline. And now, I had her voice, admitting that the theft was a choice. The injunction was about to expire, but we weren't just going to extend it. We were going to drop a nuclear bomb on the Foster Family Trust. "Draft the motion," I told Renee, "and send a copy to my mother. I want her to hear that recording before she walks into court." Renee smiled. A sharp, dangerous smile. "With pleasure." I walked out into the city. The sun was shining. For the first time in weeks, I didn't feel like I was being hunted. I felt like the hunter. The courtroom smelled of floor wax and stale anxiety. I sat at the plaintiff's table, my spine pressed against the hard wood of the chair, trying to keep my face completely neutral. Across the aisle, my mother sat with the posture of a deposed queen. She wore a navy suit that signaled conservative respectability, and she dabbed at dry eyes with a linen handkerchief. Mr. Aris, the attorney for the Foster Family Trust, was in the middle of his opening argument. He had a voice like poured syrup, smooth and cloying. "Your Honor," Aris said, gesturing toward me with an open palm. "What we have here is not a legal matter. It is a family tragedy. A mother, seeing her daughter struggling with the crushing weight of modern homeownership, stepped in to help. She paid off the mortgage, a gift of over $300,000. And how is she repaid? With a lawsuit, with accusations of fraud, with public humiliation." He paused for effect, looking at Judge Vance. "Ms. Foster alleges she did not consent to the transfer of title to the family trust. Yet, the defense will show that this was a restructuring agreement discussed at length during family dinners. The daughter gets a debt-free life. The family secures the asset for future generations. It is a standard estate planning maneuver. The only fraud here, Your Honor, is the plaintiff's feigned ignorance now that she has realized she cannot liquidate the asset for quick cash to fund, let us say, a less stable lifestyle." I felt the blood drain from my face. A less stable lifestyle. They were painting me as a prodigal daughter, a woman who would take the money and run, necessitating the trust's protective control. Renee Calder did not stand up immediately. She waited until Aris sat down, letting his words hang in the air until they started to stale. Then she rose. "Your Honor," Renee said, her voice cutting through the syrup like a scalpel. "Mr. Aris tells a compelling story about maternal benevolence. Unfortunately, the evidence tells a story of organized document fraud." She walked to the podium. "We are not here to debate gratitude. We are here to debate physics. On October 24th, at 2:15 in the afternoon, a deed was notarized in Belmere claiming my client appeared in person. At that exact moment, my client was 5 miles away, logged into a secure server at her place of employment, visible on security cameras which we have submitted as Exhibit B." Renee picked up a document. "Furthermore, we have the sworn deposition of the notary, Mr. Derek Voss, who admits he never saw Anna Foster. He admits he was paid to notarize a pre-signed document brought to him by an associate of the defendant." She dropped the deposition on the table. It made a heavy, satisfying thud. "And finally," Renee continued, "if this was a consensual agreement, why did the defendants prepare an affidavit of voluntary relinquishment dated 3 weeks in the future? Why create a document stating my client is leaving due to mental exhaustion on a date that has not yet occurred? This is not estate planning, Your Honor. This is a scripted eviction." Judge Vance looked at the defense table. Mr. Aris looked significantly less smug. Elaine was staring straight ahead, her jaw set so tight I could see the muscle twitching. "The injunction is extended," Judge Vance ruled, his voice flat. "Indefinitely. And Mr. Aris, I am granting the plaintiff's motion for expedited discovery. I want to see every email, every text message, and every internal memo from Meridian Advisory and the law firm of Keller, Rohn, and Bell that references this property. If there is a script, as Ms. Calder suggests, I want to read the first draft." The gavel banged. The victory felt hollow. As I walked out, I passed my mother. She didn't look at me. She looked through me. "You are making a mistake, Anna," she said, her voice low and terrible. "You are exposing things you do not understand." "I understand that you forged my signature," I said. "I saved you," she hissed. "And you are destroying us." The discovery process is usually slow. A war of attrition fought with boxes of paper, but Renee was aggressive, and the judge's order was broad. 2 days later, a courier delivered a hard drive to Renee's office containing the internal communications from Meridian Advisory. We sat in the conference room, the large screen on the wall displaying the email threads. "Here," Renee said, pointing to a thread with the subject line, Asset Shield Plan/Foster. I read the emails. They were between Lydia Crow, my mother's broker, and a senior partner at Keller, Roan, and Bell named Marcus Bell. Email from Lydia Crow to Marcus Bell. October 10th. Elaine is concerned about the exposure on the Evans situation. The creditors are circling. If the startup bankruptcy pierces the corporate veil, they will come after her personal guarantee. We need to shore up the collateral base. Email from Marcus Bell to Lydia Crow. October 11th. The primary residence is already leveraged. What about the daughter's property? Briarwood Lane. Is there equity there? Email from Lydia Crow to Marcus Bell. October 11th. Substantial equity, but Anna is particular. She tracks everything. A direct ask will result in a compliance audit. She is an analyst by trade. We need a workaround. If we pay off the note, we can argue the transfer is a consolidation. We need to move the asset into the trust before the creditors file the lien against Evan. Email from Marcus Bell to Lydia Crow. October 12th. Understood. Treat the Briarwood property as recoverable value. If she refuses cooperative transfer, we trigger the capacity clause. Draft the exhaustion affidavit as a contingency. I stared at the words, recoverable value. I wasn't a daughter. I was a piggy bank. I was a resource to be harvested because my brother had failed. Evan, I whispered. Read the next part, Renee said gently. Email from Elaine Foster to Lydia Crow. October 13th. Do it. Evan is falling apart. I cannot let him lose his standing. If he goes bankrupt, his wife will leave him. We have to protect the image. Anna can always rent an apartment. She does not need a house that size. Use the account to clear her mortgage. I will handle the signature. I felt a cold rage settle in my chest. It was heavier than the panic I had felt before. This was the weight of absolute clarity. My mother had guaranteed Evan's business debts. I knew Evan had started a tech consulting firm 2 years ago. I knew he drove a Porsche he couldn't afford. I knew he lived in a condo in the trendy part of town. I assumed he was successful, but he wasn't. He was drowning. And instead of letting him learn to swim, Elaine had decided to use my life jacket to keep him afloat. She sacrificed me, I said, to save his marriage, to save his reputation. She sacrificed you to save her own ego, Renee corrected. If Evan fails, she fails. If you fail, well, that fits the narrative she has already written for you. I drove to Evan's condo that night. I didn't call first. It was a sleek, modern building with a doorman who knew me. I went up to the 12th floor. I banged on the door. Evan opened it, looking disheveled. He was wearing sweatpants, and the apartment behind him was dark. Anna, he said, stepping back. I was going to call you. Let me in, I said. I walked past him into the living room. It was littered with takeout boxes. His wife, Jessica, wasn't there. Where is she? I asked. She is staying at her parents' for a few days, Evan mumbled. She doesn't know about the bankruptcy, about any of it. But Mom knows, I said. Mom guaranteed the loans, didn't she? Evan slumped onto the couch. He looked like a child, small and defeated. It was supposed to work. Anna, the algorithm. We had a contract pending. It just fell through. The bank called the note. It is $2 million. $2 million, I repeated. And Mom is on the hook? Yes. And if she has to pay it, they have to liquidate assets. But she didn't want to sell the big house. It is her identity. So she looked for other liquidity. Me, I said. My house, $300,000 of equity. It wouldn't cover the whole debt, but it would buy you time. It would be collateral. She could show the bank to delay the seizure. Evan put his head in his hands. She told me she would handle it. She said, Evan, keep your mouth shut. I will fix the money. If you tell Jessica, if you tell Anna, the whole family falls apart. She said she was saving my marriage. She didn't save your marriage. Evan, she stole my home. I know, he cried. Looking up, his face was wet with tears. I know, okay? I felt sick every day. When you called me about the payoff, I wanted to tell you, but she threatened me. She said if I spoke up, she would let the creditors take everything. I would be homeless. Jessica would leave me. I was scared. Anna, I am a coward. I looked at him. My little brother. I remembered teaching him to ride a bike. I remembered helping him with his math homework. I loved him, but love was not enough to wash away the betrayal. He had watched me panic. He had watched me question my sanity. He had sat at that dinner table and let our mother call me unstable, knowing full well that I was the only solvent person in the room. You traded me, I said, my voice trembling. You traded my safety for your secret. I am sorry, he sobbed. I need you to fix it, I said. I need you to tell the truth, not to me, to the lawyers. I can't, he whispered. She will destroy me. She is already destroying you. Evan, I said. Look at you. You are hiding in the dark, lying to your wife, letting your sister be gaslit by a criminal conspiracy. You are already destroyed. The only way out is to burn the lie. I walked to the door. I paused, my hand on the latch. If you don't testify, I said, I will subpoena your financial records. I will put your bankruptcy on the public record in open court. Jessica will find out. The world will find out. You can either tell the truth and ask for mercy, or you can force me to expose you. It is your choice. I left him there. I sat in my car in the parking garage and screamed. I screamed until my throat felt raw. I hated them. I hated the money, the image, the secrets. I hated that they had made me into someone who had to threaten her own brother to get justice. The next morning, Renee called with another development. We have a witness, she said. A Mrs. Colleen Hart. She lives 2 doors down from you. Mrs. Hart? I asked. She is 70 years old. She walks a poodle. What does she know? She knows that your mother is not just a mastermind, but a clumsy one, Renee said. We canvassed the neighborhood. Mrs. Hart gave a statement. I went to the office to read it. Statement of Colleen Hart. I was gardening in early September. Mrs. Foster, Anna's mother, pulled up in her Mercedes. She waved and came over to the fence. She was very chatty. She asked how Anna was doing, said she was worried Anna was working too hard. Then she asked a strange question. She asked if I knew a good locksmith. She said Anna had lost her spare key and was locked out, and she wanted to make a copy for her, but she didn't know which key on her ring was the right one. She asked if I had a spare key to let her in so she could check. I told her I didn't have a key. She seemed annoyed and left. She was fishing for access, I said. In September. Exactly, Renee said. This destroys the rogue paralegal theory. This establishes premeditation by Elaine herself. She was actively trying to gain physical entry to your home months before the transfer. She wanted the deed. She wanted the journals. She wanted to plant the narrative. And when she couldn't get the key from the neighbor, I realized, she used the one I gave her 3 years ago, the one she swore she lost. It proves she is a liar, Renee said, and it proves she is dangerous. But the opposition was not done. Keller, Rohn, and Bell, the law firm that had drafted the forged documents, filed a motion to dismiss the claims against them. Their argument was simple. They were victims too. Defendant Keller, Rohn, and Bell asserts that the documents in question were prepared by a temporary paralegal who acted outside the scope of their employment. Allegedly at the behest of a third party, the firm had no knowledge of the forgery. They are scapegoating a temp, I said, reading the motion. Standard operating procedure, Renee said, but they made a mistake. They sent us the native files in the discovery dump. They scrubbed the author name from the Word document properties. But they forgot the version history metadata. Renee spun her monitor around. Look at the edit history, she said. I leaned in. Document created. October 10th. Author, J. Doe, Tempasa profile. Document edited. October 11th. Author, M. Bell, partner profile. Document finalized. October 12th. Author, M. Bell, partner profile. Marcus Bell, I said. The senior partner, the one emailing Lydia Crow. He didn't just review it, Renee said. He edited it. He touched the file. He knew. He isn't a victim. He is the architect. Renee leaned back in her chair, a look of grim satisfaction on her face. Anna, we have them. We have the motive. Evan's debt. We have the method. Lydia and the wire. We have the execution, the forgery and the notary. And we have the cover-up, the law firm. So we win, I said. Renee shook her head slowly. It is not that simple. We have enough to win at trial. But a trial will take a year. It will cost you $50,000 in legal fees. It will be public. The press will pick it up. Local socialite steals daughter's home. It will be a circus. She looked me in the eye. They know they are beaten. They know the metadata kills Marcus Bell's career. They know the emails destroy Lydia Crow. And they know the bankruptcy revelation ruins Evan and Elaine. What happens? They are going to offer a settlement, Renee said. A big one. They will offer to return the house. They will offer to pay your legal fees. They might even offer pain and suffering money. But there will be a catch. A non-disclosure agreement, I guessed. A watertight one, Renee said. They will want you to sign a paper saying this was all a misunderstanding. They will want to seal the record. They will want to erase the truth to save their skins. I thought about the paid in full notice. I thought about the scratching on my mailbox. I thought about Evan crying on his couch, and my mother's cold, dead eyes in the courtroom. They want to buy my silence, I said. Yes, Renee said. And for a lot of people, that is the right call. You get your house back. You get paid. You move on. But you have to decide what you actually want. Anna, do you want the house, or do you want the truth? I looked at the metadata on the screen. M. Bell. I looked at the email printout. Recoverable value. I thought about the years of being told I was too sensitive, too suspicious, too dramatic. If I signed an NDA, I was agreeing with them. I was saying that my reality could be bought and sold just like my house. I don't want their money, I said. I want my name back. Renee nodded. Then get ready, because if we reject the settlement, they will stop trying to hide the dirt and start trying to bury you in it. The next phase won't be about the law. It will be about character assassination. Let them try, I said. I have nothing left to hide. They are the ones with the skeletons. I went home that night and sat on my porch. The air was cold, signaling the coming winter. I looked at the house, my phone buzzed. An unknown number. I answered. Anna, a voice said. It was Marcus Bell, the lawyer. His voice was not smooth syrup like Eris. It was tight, controlled panic. Mr. Bell, I said. I believe you should be speaking to my attorney. I am speaking to you off the record, he said quickly. We can make this go away. Anna, all of it. The deed is reversed tomorrow. The house is yours. We will cut a check for $100,000 for your trouble. Evan's debt is managed elsewhere. Just sign the agreement. End it. $100,000, I said, testing the words. It was a lot of money. It was security. Think about your family, Bell said. Think about your brother. If this goes to trial, he is collateral damage. Do you really want to be the one who ruins him? The manipulation was seamless, even now, with his digital fingerprints on the weapon. He was trying to make me feel guilty for the bleeding. I didn't ruin him, Mr. Bell, I said, my voice steady. And I didn't forge the deed. You did. Anna, be reasonable. I am done being reasonable, I said. I am being compliant, and compliance requires full disclosure. I hung up. I sat there in the dark, the silence of the neighborhood wrapping around me. I knew what was coming. They would leak stories. They would attack my mental health records. They would try to break me, but they had made a fatal error. They thought I was fighting for a building. I wasn't. I was fighting for the right to exist in my own life without permission. I stood up and went inside. I locked the door. I checked the camera feed. The mediation room was located on the 14th floor of a building that smelled of lemon polish and expensive cologne. It was a neutral ground, a place designed to suck the emotion out of conflict and replace it with numbers on a whiteboard. I sat on one side of a long, boat-shaped table. Renee was next to me, her laptop open, her face impassive. Across from us sat my mother, her attorney Mr. Aris, and a junior associate who looked like he was afraid to breathe too loudly. At the head of the table sat the mediator, a retired judge named Mr. Henderson. He had a kind face and a voice that sounded like gravel crunching under tires. "We are here to find a resolution," Mr. Henderson said, clasping his hands. "Litigation is expensive. It is public. It is destructive. I believe we have a proposal on the table from the defendants. Mr. Iris slid a document across the mahogany surface. It was thick, bound in a blue cover. "The trust is prepared to make a significant concession," Aris said, his voice smooth. "We will execute a deed restoration immediately. Title returns to Anna Foster. The mortgage payoff remains as a gift, a $314,000 benefit to Ms. Foster. In exchange, we ask for a dismissal of all claims with prejudice and the signing of this settlement agreement." I looked at the document. My heart rate kicked up. This was it. I could walk out of here with my house, no debt, and my life back. The nightmare could end today. I looked at Elaine. She was watching me, her expression unreadable. She didn't look sorry. She looked like a chess player waiting for me to take the bait. "Read the terms carefully, Anna," Renee murmured. Touching my arm, I opened the folder. The first few pages were standard legalese, parties involved, definitions. Then I reached the section titled Recital of Facts. Whereas, the parties acknowledged that a misunderstanding occurred regarding the estate planning strategy for the Foster Family Trust. And whereas, the plaintiff, Anna Foster, initially expressed interest in asset protection strategies, but subsequently withdrew consent due to miscommunication regarding the timing of the transfer. And whereas, the defendants acted in good faith to secure the asset based on said prior expressions of interest. I stopped reading. My hands started to shake. "Misunderstanding?" I said, my voice cutting through the silence. "This says I expressed interest. This says they acted in good faith. It is standard language. Ms. Foster," Aris said dismissively, "we need to contextualize the settlement so that it does not look like an admission of liability. It protects everyone's reputation, including yours. You do not want to be the daughter who sued her mother, do you?" I looked further down. Confidentiality and non-disparagement. The plaintiff agrees to keep the terms of this agreement and the underlying facts of the dispute strictly confidential. The plaintiff agrees not to correct, amend, or dispute any prior public filings related to the transfer, provided the title is restored. "This bars me from correcting the record," I said. "If I sign this, the affidavit saying I was mentally exhausted stays in the files at the law firm. The narrative that I am unstable stays. I just get the house back as a— what? A consolation prize?" "You get a paid-off house, Anna," Elaine said. It was the first time she had spoken. "Stop reading the fine print and look at the bottom line. You win. Take the win." I looked at her. I looked at the pen sitting on the table. I was so tired. I hadn't slept a full night in 6 weeks. My work was suffering. My friends were tiptoeing around me. I just wanted to go home and lock the door and forget that my family existed. I picked up the pen. Renee didn't stop me. She knew this had to be my choice. I hovered the pen over the signature line. Anna Marie Foster. If I signed. The war was over. But if I signed, I was agreeing that it was a misunderstanding. I was agreeing that my truth was negotiable. I was agreeing to let them keep their lie, as long as they paid me for it. I looked at the words acted in good faith. There was no good faith when she traced my signature. There was no good faith when she guaranteed Evan's debt with my home. There was no good faith when she called me unstable to my face. I put the pen down. I closed the folder. I slid it back across the table. "No," I said. "Anna," Elaine said, her voice sharpening. "Do not be an idiot. This is over $300,000. It is not about the money, I said. I stood up. My legs felt steady. The recital of facts is a lie. There was no misunderstanding. You stole my house. You forged my name. And I will not sign a document that says you acted in good faith. Then we go to trial, Eris threatened. And we will bury you in motions for the next 2 years. You will be bankrupt before you see a jury. Maybe, I said, but at least I will own my own name. I walked out. Renee followed me, and as the heavy door clicked shut, she let out a short, sharp laugh. I was worried for a second there, she said. But you made the right call. Now, we take the gloves off. The next morning, Renee filed an amended complaint. It was a scorched earth document. We weren't just suing for the return of the title anymore. We added counts for civil conspiracy, fraudulent notarization, professional negligence against the law firm, and most personally, intentional infliction of emotional distress. The filing hit the public docket, and because Belmere is a small city where the Fosters were known, it made the local legal blogs, daughter sues socialite mother in real estate fraud scandal. The reaction was immediate. My phone started pinging with notifications from Facebook and Instagram. I hadn't posted anything, but I was being tagged. Distant relatives, cousins I hadn't seen since I was 12, great aunts who lived in Florida, began posting vague prayer hand emojis on my timeline, praying for the Foster family during this difficult time. Mental health is such a fragile thing. So sad to see a family torn apart by confusion. Trusting God to heal all hearts. Thinking of you. Elaine, you have done so much for those kids. They were buying the narrative. Elaine had gotten to them first. She had spun the story that I was having a breakdown, that I was lashing out, and that the lawsuit was just a symptom of my illness. I sat in my kitchen. Scrolling through the comments, I felt sick. It was a digital version of the gaslighting I had endured at Sunday dinners for years. Don't engage, Renee had warned me. Do not get into a comment war. But silence felt like complicity. I am not going to argue, I told Renee on the phone, but I am going to state the facts. We drafted a statement. It was short, cold, and precise. Regarding the property at 14 Briarwood Lane, this is not a family dispute regarding estate planning. This is a legal matter concerning the forgery of legal instruments and the unauthorized transfer of deeded property. We have declined a settlement offer that required a non-disclosure agreement because the truth is not for sale. The evidence is on file with the Belmere Civil Court. I posted it. Then I turned off the comments. The silence that followed was heavy, but it was clean. 2 days later, the cracks in their fortress began to widen. Renee received an encrypted email from an anonymous Proton Mail account. The subject line was simply, Logs. Attached were screenshots of an internal chat system from Meridian Advisory Collective, the firm where Lydia Crow worked. Renee called me immediately. You need to see this. I drove to her office. We looked at the screen. The timestamps corresponded to the week before the theft. User, L. Crow, Lydia Crow. User, J. Matthews. Assistant, L. Crow. Did you get the payoff quote from North Valley? J. Matthews. Yes. Foster is asking if we should notify the daughter. She is the borrower of record. L. Crow. No contact. Elaine says the daughter is high conflict. If we loop her in, she will panic and tank the deal. Keep her out of the loop until the recording is done. J. Matthews. Is that legal? It is her mortgage. L. Crow. Elaine has POA, allegedly. Just process the wire, and when you call the bank, use the mother's landline. We need to keep Anna emotional on calls if she does find out, if she sounds hysterical. Nobody listens to the fraud claim. It becomes a family issue. L. Crow. Elaine says if we push the unstable angle, the bank will back off. Keep the pressure on. I read the line again. Keep Anna emotional on calls. If she sounds hysterical. Nobody listens to the fraud claim. It was a playbook. Every time I had cried, every time I had raised my voice, every time I had shown a shred of human reaction to having my life stolen. I was following their script. This is malice, Renee said softly. This takes it out of negligence and into targeted abuse. Keep her emotional. They weaponized your feelings against you. Can we use this? I asked. Oh, we are definitely using this, Renee said. I am sending this to the judge, and I am sending it to the Belmere Financial Crimes Unit. The criminal investigation was the next step, but it was a slow, grinding gear compared to the civil suit. I met with Detective Miller at the precinct. He was a tired man with a desk buried under folders. We have the report from the handwriting expert, Miller said, tapping a file. And we have the notary's declaration. Derek Voss, the notary who had crumbled in the deposition, had signed a formal sworn declaration for the police in exchange for immunity. He named Lydia Crow explicitly. He described the envelope. He described the cash payment. So arrest them, I said. Arrest my mother. Arrest Lydia. Miller sighed. It is not that simple, Ms. Foster. We have to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that your mother knew the signature was forged. She is claiming she thought you signed it and sent it to her. She is claiming she was acting as a proxy. Lydia is claiming she was following client instructions. But the chat logs, I said, they talk about keeping me emotional. They talk about bypassing me. It shows they were unethical, Miller said. It shows they were mean. But we need to prove criminal intent to defraud. We need to trace the money and prove that the trust was just a vehicle to hide assets from creditors. That takes subpoenas. That takes forensic accounting. It will take months. Months, I repeated. So they just walk around free while I live in a house I have to fight for every day? The civil courts move faster on the property, Miller said. We are building the case for the prison time. Be patient. Patience. It was a word I was coming to hate. I went home. I couldn't just sit there and wait for the lawyers to talk. I needed to feel safe in my own space. I hired a security contractor. He installed cameras at the front door, the back door, and covering the driveway. I put sensors on the windows. I changed the locks again, this time to high-security cylinders that couldn't be picked. I started seeing a therapist. Dr. Aris, no relation to the lawyer, who specialized in family trauma. You are waiting for the other shoe to drop. Doctor, Aris told me during our third session, you are living in a state of hypervigilance. That is a normal reaction to an abnormal betrayal. I just want to be boring again, I said. I want to worry about my grocery list, not my deed. You will get there, she said. But you have to grieve first. You didn't just lose trust in your mother. You lost the idea of having a mother who protects you. That was the hardest part. I realized I wasn't fighting to get my mother back. I was fighting to accept that I never really had her. The mother I thought I had was a projection of my own needs. The real woman was the one who wrote emails about recoverable value. Then, the first domino fell. Evan, I hadn't spoken to him since the night at his condo. I had left him with an ultimatum. Tell the truth or be exposed. 10 days after I rejected the settlement, a courier arrived at Renee's office with a document filed by Evan's new attorney. He had hired his own counsel. Separate from the trust, it was a retraction of witness statement. I read it in Renee's office. I, Evan Foster, hereby retract any prior verbal or written assertions that I witnessed Anna Foster sign documents related to the transfer of 14 Briarwood Lane. I admit that I signed as a witness on documents that were already signed, at the request of Elaine Foster, who assured me that Anna Foster had signed them previously. I have no personal knowledge of Anna Foster's consent to this transaction. It wasn't a full confession of the conspiracy, but it was enough. He was jumping ship. He was cutting the cord that tied him to Elaine's lie. This is huge, Renee said. Without the witness, the deed is invalid on its face. The notary is compromised. The witness recanted. The document is void. Attached to the filing was a personal letter. It was addressed to me, but it was filed with the court, making it part of the public record. Anna, I am sorry. I was drowning in my own mess, and I let Mom convince me that using your house was the only life raft. I was weak. I know this doesn't fix it, and I know you probably won't forgive me. but I cannot let you lose your home because I was afraid of losing my lifestyle. I have filed for Chapter 7 bankruptcy today. The secret is out. I hope one day you can look at me again. Evan, I put the letter down. I didn't cry. I felt a strange, cold sense of relief. He had finally done the right thing. Even if he had been forced into it, the bankruptcy filing meant Elaine's plan had failed anyway. She had stolen my house to save his image, and now his image was shattered regardless. It was all for nothing. The cruelty was entirely wasted. The house of cards is collapsing, Renee said. Now we just need the final blow. The final blow came from technology. The judge's discovery order had been broad. It included all electronic devices used to prepare or discuss the transfer documents, Elaine's personal assistant. A woman named Sarah, who I had met only twice, had turned over her laptop for forensic imaging. She was a bystander, a woman just doing her job. But her hard drive held the smoking gun. Renee called me on a Tuesday afternoon. Come in, now. When I got there, the forensic expert, a guy named Kevin with a ponytail and a caffeine jitter, was projecting his screen onto the wall. We recovered a deleted folder, Kevin said. It was in the recycle bin, but the sectors hadn't been overwritten yet. The folder is named Anna Transfer Final. He clicked it open. Inside were 12 Word documents. They were dated over a period of 3 months, starting way back in August, long before the payoff in October. They were drafts, scripts, file, strategy _V1 _ compassionate, DOC file, strategy _V2 hardball, DOC file, strategy _V3 capacity argument, DOCX. Open V3, Renee commanded. Kevin clicked it. It was a memo. Written by Elaine. If Anna refuses the gift narrative, we pivot to capacity. We frame the payoff as an intervention. We need to document instances of her being overwhelmed or anxious. Start mentioning her stress levels to family members now to build the baseline. If she fights, we file the exhaustion affidavit and petition for conservatorship over the property. I stared at the screen. Petition for conservatorship. She wasn't just going to take the house. She was going to take my autonomy. She was going to try to declare me incompetent to manage my own affairs so she could legally control the asset. It was premeditated, I whispered. It was a long con. Look at this one, Kevin said, opening another file, rehearsal _notes, DOCX. It was a list of bullet points. Tell Anna she looks tired. Emphasize drowning metaphor. Ensure Evan is on board with the debt shield. Have Lydia prep the wire to look like a bank error if caught early. Notary. Use Voss. He is flexible. She wrote it down, I said. She actually wrote down her crime. Narcissists love to document their own genius, Renee said grimly. She thought she was smarter than everyone. She thought she was writing a play, and she needed to keep the actors in line. I felt a coldness spread through my limbs. This was the woman who had raised me. This was the woman who had sat at my bedside when I had the flu, and for 3 months, she had been sitting at her computer, typing out bullet points on how to gaslight me into believing I was insane, all to cover a bad loan. This is it, Renee said. This is the end of the mediation. This is the end of the settlement talks. We are going to file this as Exhibit A in the summary judgment motion, and I am going to hand-deliver a copy to the district attorney. I looked at the file names. Compassionate, hardball, capacity. She had tried them all. She had tried the blessing. She had tried the ungrateful daughter speech. She had tried the mental exhaustion affidavit, but she had forgotten one variable. She had forgotten that the daughter she was trying to erase was a compliance analyst. She had forgotten that I made a living finding the errors in the system. Do it, I said. File it all. I drove home that evening under a sky that was threatening snow. The air was sharp and clean. I pulled into my driveway. The motion sensor light snapped on, flooding the pavement with bright, white light. I looked at the camera mounted above the garage. I saw the red LED blink. I was safe, not because my mother protected me, but because I protected myself. I went inside. The house was quiet. I walked to the kitchen. I looked at the spot on the counter where I had first opened the paid in full letter. It felt like a lifetime ago. I wasn't the same person who had opened that letter. That Anna was afraid of being difficult. That Anna was afraid of making a scene. The Anna who stood here now had sued her mother, forced her brother into bankruptcy to save his soul, and uncovered a conspiracy that read like a thriller novel. I made a cup of tea. I sat down at the table. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Evan. I saw what they found on the laptop. I didn't know it went that deep. Anna, I didn't know about the conservatorship stuff. I am so sorry. I looked at the message. I didn't reply. I wasn't ready to offer absolution. I took a sip of tea. Tomorrow, we would go back to court. We would present the Anna transfer final folder. We would watch Elaine's high-priced defense crumble under the weight of her own arrogance. But for tonight, I just sat in my house, my paid-off, stolen, fought for, scarred, and beautiful house. I listened to the wind rattle the windows. It sounded like applause. The final hearing did not begin with a bang. It began with the quiet, rhythmic thud of binders hitting the plaintiff's table. There were 5 of them, each 3 inches thick, color-coded and tabbed with a precision that bordered on surgical. Red for the forensic handwriting analysis, blue for the bank records and wire transfers, green for the internal communications from Meridian Advisory, yellow for the metadata logs from the law firm, and black, the darkest binder, for the folder recovered from Elaine's assistant's laptop, the one titled Anna Transfer Final. I sat next to Renee Calder. The courtroom was packed. The local press had sniffed out the story after the amended complaint was filed, and the idea of a prominent Belmere socialite defrauding her own daughter had proved too salacious to ignore. I could feel the eyes on the back of my neck, a heavy, itching sensation. Elaine sat at the defense table. She looked thinner than she had at the mediation. Her suit was a soft gray, intended to evoke sympathy, but her posture was rigid. She did not look at me. She stared straight ahead at the empty judge's bench, her jaw set in a line of granite. Judge Vance swept into the room, his robes billowing. He took his seat and looked over the rim of his glasses at the mountain of evidence on our table, then at the meager stack on the defense side. "Counsel," Judge Vance said, "we are here for a summary judgment hearing on the matter of Foster versus the Foster Family Trust. I have reviewed the submitted briefs. Ms. Calder, you may proceed." Renee stood up. She didn't pace. She didn't shout. She simply walked to the podium and opened the black binder. "Your Honor," Renee began, her voice filling the silence. "Fraud is usually a crime of concealment. It is done in the shadows. But the fraud committed against Anna Foster was unique. It was committed with a terrifying sense of entitlement. It was documented, rehearsed, and justified by the defendants not as a crime, but as a parental right." She projected the first slide onto the courtroom screen. It was the report from the Sterling Handwriting Lab. The overlaid signatures, the payoff request, and the deed glowed in high definition. "We have proven, through forensic analysis, that the signature on the deed transferring my client's home was a digital simulation," Renee said. "We have the sworn declaration of the notary, Derek Voss, who admits he never saw Anna Foster. He admits he was paid cash by an associate of Elaine Foster to notarize a forged document." Renee clicked the remote. The screen changed to the email chain from Meridian Advisory. "We have proven motive," Renee continued. "We have internal emails describing my client's home as recoverable value needed to shield the family from the bankruptcy of Evan Foster. We have the defendant's own words instructing her broker to keep Anna emotional, to discredit her." She clicked again. The file list from the Anna Transfer Final folder appeared. "And finally, Your Honor, we have the script. We have the draft affidavits alleging my client was mentally exhausted, written weeks before the transfer even occurred. This was not a family dispute. This was a hostile takeover, planned with the cold precision of a corporate raid." Renee turned to look at Elaine. The defense argues this was a misunderstanding. We argue it was a conspiracy. Mr. Eris, Elaine's lawyer, looked like a man trying to stop a tidal wave with a paper umbrella. He stood up, buttoning his jacket. Your Honor, Eris said, his voice straining for dignity. The plaintiff presents a compelling narrative of villainy, but she ignores the context. Mrs. Foster acted as a power of attorney, a power she believed she held verbally, to save her daughter from financial ruin. The methods may have been unorthodox, but the intent was preservation, not theft. Intent is best judged by the actor, Judge Vance said, cutting him off. I want to hear from the defendant. Mrs. Foster, take the stand. A ripple of whispers went through the gallery. Elaine stood up. She smoothed her skirt. She walked to the witness box with her head high, climbing the steps as if she were ascending a throne. Renee waited for her to be sworn in. Mrs. Foster, Renee said, did you instruct your broker, Lydia Crow, to wire funds to pay off your daughter's mortgage without your daughter's written consent? Elaine adjusted the microphone. I instructed Lydia to secure my daughter's future. Did you ask Anna if she wanted her mortgage paid off? Anna was overwhelmed, Elaine said, her voice steady and cool. She was working 60 hours a week. She was complaining about bills. A mother knows when her child is drowning. I didn't need to ask for permission to throw her a life preserver. So you forged her signature on the payoff request? I signed on her behalf, Elaine corrected. It is a formality. We are family. What is mine is hers, and what is hers is mine. That is how we have always operated. Is it? Renee asked. Because the deed transfer moved the house solely into a trust controlled by you. That doesn't sound like sharing. That sounds like seizing. Elaine's eyes flashed. The trust is for the family. Anna is family. Therefore, the house was still hers. Just protected from her own poor judgment. Poor judgment? Renee asked. Anna has a credit score of 800. She has perfect payment history. What poor judgment are you referring to? She is emotional, Elaine said, looking directly at me for the first time. Her gaze was not loving. It was clinical. She panics. She obsesses. Look at this lawsuit. Look at the spectacle she has created over a simple restructuring. This proves she is not stable enough to handle assets of this magnitude. The gaslighting was breathtaking. She was using my reaction to her crime as proof that I deserved the crime. Mrs. Foster, Renee said, her voice dropping an octave. Did you write a memo titled Capacity Argument in August, outlining a plan to have your daughter declared incompetent if she refused to sign the deed? Elaine hesitated. For the first time, the granite cracked. I explore all contingencies, she said. Did you write it? I was worried about her mental state, Elaine snapped, her voice rising. I am her mother. It is my job to control the environment so she doesn't hurt herself. If she wouldn't listen to reason, I had to be prepared to take the reins. That is what love is. Love is doing the hard thing because you know better. So, Renee said, pinning her to the wall, you believe that your love gives you the right to forge legal documents, bribe notaries, and steal property? I believe, Elaine said, spitting the words, that I am the only reason any of them have anything. I built this life. I manage the image. I fix the mistakes. If I have to sign a paper to save the ship, I will sign the paper. No further questions, Renee said. Elaine stayed in the box for a moment. Breathing hard, she looked at the judge, expecting a nod of understanding. Judge Vance stared back at her with a look of profound distaste. Ms. Foster, the judge said to me, please take the stand. I walked past my mother. We did not touch. I sat in the chair she had just vacated. The wood was still warm. Renee stood by the table. Anna, tell the court what this has done to you. I looked at the gallery. I saw Evans sitting in the back row, his head in his hands. I saw Mrs. Hart, my neighbor, watching with a grim expression. It wasn't the money, I said. My voice was quiet, but the microphone caught it, amplifying it through the room. I can earn more money. I can buy another house. I took a breath. It was the reality. For 32 years, I thought my mother was critical because she wanted me to be better. When I found out she had forged my name, when I heard the recording of her telling her broker to keep me emotional, I realized the truth. She didn't want me to be better. She wanted me to be manageable. I looked at Judge Vance. I spent months thinking I was going crazy. I checked my locks 3 times a night. I doubted my own memory. I wondered if I really had agreed to sell the house and just forgot. They made me question my own mind so they could take my property. That isn't love. That is erasure. They tried to erase me from my own life because they needed my equity to pay for a lie. I paused. I am asking the court to give me back my deed. But more than that, I am asking the court to put it on the public record that I am not crazy, I am not unstable, and I did not consent. I stepped down. The silence in the room was absolute. Judge Vance did not retire to his chambers. He didn't need to. He opened a folder on his bench and uncapped his pen. "The evidence in this case," Judge Vance said, his voice booming, "is not just clear and convincing, it is overwhelming. It paints a portrait of a family system so toxic that it viewed fraud as a standard operating procedure." He looked at Elaine. "Mrs. Foster, your testimony was chilling. You seem to believe that your status as a matriarch places you above the law. It does not." He began to read the order. "I am hereby declaring the quitclaim deed recorded on October 24th to be void ab initio. It is a nullity. The title to the property at 14 Briarwood Lane is restored immediately and solely to Anna Marie Foster. The Foster Family Trust has no claim, lien, or interest in the property." He turned a page. "Regarding the professionals involved, I am referring Derek Voss to the Secretary of State for immediate revocation of his notary commission and to the District Attorney for potential criminal prosecution. I am referring the conduct of Marcus Bell and the firm of Keller, Roan, and Bell to the State Bar Association for disciplinary action regarding the falsification of document metadata and conflict of interest. Regarding damages," the judge continued, "I am awarding the plaintiff statutory damages for the fraud, plus legal fees, and $100,000 in punitive damages for the intentional infliction of emotional distress." He looked at me. "However, the court acknowledges that collecting these damages may be complex given the pending bankruptcy proceedings of Evan Foster and the tangled assets of the defendants. But the judgment stands as a debt owed." He banged the gavel. "Case closed." It was over. I stood up. Renee hugged me. It was a fierce, tight hug. "We did it," she whispered. I looked at the defense table. Elaine was staring at the judge, her face pale. Mr. Aris was packing his briefcase, already mentally moving on to his next case. We walked out of the courtroom into the hallway. The double doors swung open, and the flashbulbs went off. "Ms. Foster! Ms. Foster! Is it true your mother tried to have you committed?" "Anna, how do you feel about your brother's bankruptcy?" "Mrs. Foster, do you have a comment on the forgery?" The reporters swarmed. A microphone was shoved in my face. I stopped. I didn't hide. I didn't run. I looked directly into the camera of the local news station. "I have one statement," I said. The hallway went quiet. "Document fraud is not a family misunderstanding," I said clearly. "It is a crime. No one has the right to sign your name, spend your equity, or rewrite your history, no matter who they are. If you suspect your financial identity is being used by a relative, do not let them tell you that you are crazy. Trust your gut, check the records, and fight back." I turned and walked away. I didn't go to a victory party. I didn't go out for drinks. I went to my car. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Evan. "Can I see you? Just for a minute?" I met him at a coffee shop near the courthouse. He looked 10 years older than he had a month ago. He was wearing jeans and a t-shirt, stripped of the expensive suits he used to wear to hide his failure. "She is furious," Evan said, stirring his black coffee. "She is at home screaming that the judge is biased. She says she is going to appeal. Let her appeal, I said. Renee says the judgment is bulletproof. Evan looked down. The police called me. They are opening a file on the wire fraud. They want to know about the tax planning envelopes. Are you going to talk to them? I have to, Evan said. My lawyer says if I cooperate, I might avoid jail time, probation, maybe. But Mom, she is the target. They are looking at the trust structures. They think she's been hiding money for years. He looked up at me, his eyes wet. I am sorry, Anna. I know I said it in the letter, but I need to say it to your face. I should have protected you. Yes, I said. You should have. Can we ever go back? He asked. To how it was? No, I said gently. We can't go back. That version of us was based on a lie. You were the golden boy and I was the safety net. That is over. I took a sip of my tea. But maybe we can build something new. Slowly. But there are boundaries now. Evan, I am not your banker. I am not your secret keeper, and I am not going to be in the same room as Elaine. If she is there, I am not. Evan nodded, a tear slipping down his cheek. Fair enough. I left him there. It wasn't a happy ending, but it was an honest one. I drove home. The house looked different in the twilight. It didn't look like a fortress anymore. It just looked like a house. My house. I walked up the driveway. There was a box sitting on the porch. It was the new front door hardware I had ordered online. I didn't go inside immediately. I got my toolbox from the garage. I spent the next hour removing the old lock, the one my mother had a key to, the one she had used to leave her gaslighting note on my pillow. I unscrewed the deadbolt. I stripped the strike plate. I installed the new handle. It was heavy, solid brass. I installed the new deadbolt, a keypad model with a code only I knew. I tightened the last screw. I tested the bolt. Click, click, solid. I went inside. The air was still. I walked into my office. I had bought a fireproof safe. It was heavy, bolted to the floor in the closet. I took the file box Renee had given me. It contained the certified court order restoring my title. It contained the judgment against my mother. It contained the retraction from Evan and the chat logs from Meridian. I placed the documents inside the safe. These weren't just legal papers. They were the receipt for my freedom. They were the proof that I existed, that I mattered, and that I had won. I locked the safe. I spun the dial. I walked back to the kitchen. I stood in the center of the room, listening. No phone ringing, no emails from the bank, no notifications of impending doom. Just the hum of the refrigerator and the wind outside. I had lost my family, or at least the illusion of it. I had lost my innocence. I had a long road ahead dealing with the collection of damages and the looming criminal trial. But as I stood there, for the first time in my life, I didn't feel like a daughter, or a sister, or a victim. I felt like the owner. I picked up my phone to order dinner. As the screen lit up, a message notification slid into view. It was from a number I didn't recognize. I opened it. You think this is over? You still don't know who started it. I stared at the words. My thumb hovered over the delete button. Was it Elaine? Lydia? Marcus Bell? Or someone else? Some other layer of the rot I hadn't found yet? I looked at the message for a long time. Then, I took a screenshot. I forwarded it to Renee. I didn't panic. I didn't cry. I set the phone down on the counter, face down. Bring it on, I said to the empty room. I walked to the new front door, typed in my code, and listened to the heavy steel bolt slide into place. Thank you so much for listening to Anna's story. It has been a journey through the dark side of family dynamics and the fight for personal truth. I would love to hear from you. Where are you listening from today? Have you ever had to fight to reclaim your own narrative? Please share your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story and want to hear more tales of justice and reclamation, please subscribe to Revenge Stories. Your support helps us bring these dramas to life. Until next time, keep your doors locked and your records clean.